Well, good morning to anybody who may be here once again. I've come to very much dislike the digital world. I suppose it's the same kind of dislike that people have with the digital ID and all this stuff. Interactions are just hampered now by the the type of interface that we have and these wretched keyboards that we have to play with. I mean, in the olden days, we used to use our handwriting. I was taught handwriting when I first went to school, and then the lessons were suddenly curtailed after, I think, when I reached the age of about 7 or 8. And we were told that we had to use separate letters. We were sort of imitating what was going to become the way that all letters are these days. They're just, exactly the same form and one separate from the other. But in the olden days, we learned how to write entire words without lifting the pen from the paper and forming the letters and their shapes. It was, I suppose, a creative endeavour. So I used to enjoy writing very much. And then I unlearned it and I couldn't write. And that persisted until I reached the age of about, I think I would have been maybe 50. And I made a concerted effort for some reason to learn how to write again. And I can write in script now. I wouldn't say I'm very good, but I've gone back in time and picked out the old techniques that I was taught and shaping the letters, and I've practiced here and there. So I make a point of doing some handwriting on a regular basis. The main thing I do is copy out Bible verses, but anything else that I might need to write, I prefer to write it with a pen, and a fountain pen at that, rather than a biro. Perhaps I'm a Luddite, but because I'm doing my accounts at the moment, the accounts have become increasingly digital. And now, to go back in time and to find invoices and to clip them to the accounts, I have to go into various different digital environments, and passwords are required and usernames are required, and if you get something wrong, it's a problem. And everything is on a cloud now. So my business has become completely unmanageable to me. I don't have the proper records because I don't know where anything is anymore, whether it's been saved on a local disk or saved to a cloud or both, and which is the latest version. And the whole thing has just got on top of me. It'll be to do with my age as well. I just find it so confusing. Simply to buy something on Amazon a couple of days ago, I had to scan a code, get your phone, log into your banking system, log into Amazon. I mean, the whole thing was a nightmare. And again, with my accountant, who is based in London, who lives in London, or the office is in London anyway. When I first opened my business about 20 years ago, I think, I used to go into the office once a year and speak to the accountant, and we'd have a pleasant chat. His office overlooked at the time a village green, although it's in London, and a cricket ground as I remember it. And it was good to get to know them and chat to the people there. And the same with my translation customers, of course. I lived in Italy at the time, so I would see them quite regularly. And I'd go into their offices and perhaps work in the office for a while. We'd have a chat. And, it was a pleasant way to live. But most of my customers, my latter customers, I've never even seen now, because I've acquired them since moving to the UK, or since digital communications just became the norm. And so I no longer had to get on my bike and take a CD to an agency as I used to in the early days. It was an inevitable consequence, I understand that, but it's not been altogether pleasant in the fullness of time. So now our relations with the bank, for example, to even get our money out is sometimes it'll take a while of chatting here or logging in there and authenticating yourself. But of course, in the olden days, you could just go into the local branch, and after a while, they would know you and you would get to know them. And you could have a chat and do what you needed to do without hindrance, without let. It's not so now. It's become a digital nightmare. And I'm on the verge of giving up altogether as far as I'm able to, although I have to travel, so that'll be another highly digitalized experience, I'm sure. And it already has been, between booking the tickets and then the passport application and all this nonsense. And I think my long-term solution, I'm just going to stop working entirely and get as much money as I can out of the bank and then just stash it in secret places around my house, so when I need some money, I can just go and pick it up. You can still pay in shops using proper money in this country anyway, for a while. I don't know how long that's going to continue for. It's not been a helpful development ultimately. And I can't help thinking that all this digital stuff is going to come to a crashing end at some point. There are so many layers of security and passwords and everything, and it seems that it wouldn't take a great deal just for the whole system to grind to a halt, and all this tremendous amount of data to be lost irretrievably. Whereas the old rolls, of course, they were preserved for thousands of years. The Book of the Law was perfectly preserved by human intelligence and by scribes like myself. I suppose I'm something of a scribe, although I could describe myself as a prophet, because a translator or an interpreter, of course, in the olden days, that was their role. It was a kind of prophecy. But I'm happy to be a scribe. I don't, want to claim prophetic power, but, scribes have their place. And Ezra was a scribe, and he read distinctly from the word, for example. Another thing which is very important to do, to read the Bible in a way that it can be understood by those who hear the reading. And it can be done. I do think there are places where a word of explanation is needed. But again, it takes a careful reading and a clear reading and a faithful reading and a slow reading as well. You don't want to be racing through the Word of God. There are pauses in the Psalms, and they're identified by the word Selah. and there's debate about what Selah might mean and how it could be interpreted. But because the Psalms are essentially songs, I've come to see Selah as a pause symbol that you would get in music, or a rest. And sometimes you don't want to read the whole psalm lickety-spit. Take a break, and that break would be useful for meditating upon the meaning. And it's praiseworthy, really, that we should pause and proceed carefully. I don't care for Alexander Scorby's readings of the authorized version of the Bible, although he's undoubtedly very well spoken. But he's an actor, and you can tell. We don't want actors reading the Bible. We want scribes, men of faith and of due diligence in every matter. I don't know what I'm trying to say, really. Just, for heaven's sake, this digital stuff. I can't wait to see the back of it and to get back to the olden ways and the old-fashioned methods of going to see a person and chatting to them face to face and doing our business as upright and honest men and women. Speaking plainly and without any veil or attempt at coercion. And the other thing is that all the advertising that one has to suffer these days, it doesn't really matter what you're trying to do. You'll be interrupted with adverts attempting to get you to buy this or buy the other. And then the wicked way that algorithms work, that lead you down certain paths while you think you're just walking on the King's Highway. You've been led into little backwaters all the time by these wretched algorithms. Its name, the name of AI, is deception. This is why I hate it when people say, well, we need to bring in AI. No, we don't. The Bible has been perfectly preserved. And the Dead Sea Scrolls confirm that. And it's been preserved by men of faith, by scribes, and by checkers and checkers of scribes. That's what we do, and that's what we need to get back to doing, and switch off these wretched data centers and rows of servers. Just switch the whole thing off. We don't want it. We don't need it. Let's go back to the old ways, brothers and sisters. Let's go through the old gate, reading Nehemiah at the moment. Of course, the old gate is a very important step on the Christian life. We enter Jerusalem through the sheep gate, as it were, which is Jesus Christ, the sacrificial lamb. We come to the fish gate, which is why we become disciples and preachers of the word of God, because we are called to spread the word and to gather unto our net as believers. And the next gate that we come to is, I seem to remember, the old gate. And the old gate warns us, if you like, by its name and by its nature, to keep to the old paths, the tested paths, not to branch out in adventurous new interpretations, to always check with the records and the rolls, and to honour our ancestors and their own understanding, rather than to replace it. I suppose that was the story of the of the recent times. My life has all been about getting rid of the old and in with the new. The old was prejudice, the old was this, the old was that, and we needed to change everything. And I was completely drawn in by that narrative. Everything was about that. The movies were about it, the books were about it, the school teachers were talking of it. We understood that our parents knew nothing. And sadly, they really did know nothing, because by that time, the Word of God had been removed, long removed from our societies, and people were simply mimicking soap operas and empty philosophies, brainwashed by news programs and television screens, and everything fell apart during my lifetime, and now it's being brought back together. Restoration is coming, and that's a wonderful thing to understand. God bless this day.